foliage, detailing, overhead align equipment and a signal. Stay tuned and all will be revealed. Well, good afternoon everyone and welcome back to Piccadilly. Now you look at this and you think, oh, another scene of devastation. Well, it's not really, it's just been dismantled. And that's because work is being done on individual parts, nothing because of anything else. But you can see in front of you now the next stage in the river. I've now gone over it with some matte varnish, which is what I normally use, and that is to seal it all down. And yes, it was sealed down with hot glue and also PVA, but PVA is water soluble, as you know. This stuff that I've put on is now water resistant. So once that's gone off, I can then go over each of these stones with the Nuln oil and hopefully start to dull it down a little bit without it all moving around too much. And hopefully that should make it waterproof, ready for the resin pour a little bit later on in the year. It is coming, I promise, and both will be done either the same time or similar times. That's the other one being the mill. But obviously the biggest subtraction, I suppose, is the viaduct. So let's go down and have a look at that. Right, this is a little bit difficult to show because it's quite late in the afternoon and the big light isn't really going to make an awful lot of difference. So I've got a little light to the right, so it is shining up a bit. But what I've done basically is smothered it with a basing glue. I've gone over it with some scatters and then some layering spray. I've static grassed over the top of that, then put in some lichen and some clump foliage, or I'm not totally sure what you call that small stuff. So somebody will know. It's not clump, it's not big lumps, they're tiny bits, probably about 3 or 4 millimeters in diameter, but that and then scatters over the top. As you can see, it's still gluing, but that's probably the basis of it. Show you the other side. There you are. Obviously you can only see this arch. That arch is hidden, as you can see from there, but you can get the idea of what I'm going through there. Once this is dried, I'll do this bit, and the only reason for that is because all this lot was falling off and it just made it easier to let that dry. I mean, as you can see, I've been having it on a radiator just to make sure that it's drying off as quick as it possibly can. Now, I've started another unit, which I'll show you briefly, which will be that. Now, what I'm not going to do is go through every single little bit what I do with all the different units. It's going to be a very similar sort of process. This is the bit that goes behind the river Goits. The backboard or the scenic break is just here. The viaduct is kind of just here. So this will need to be quite heavily densed with foliage, and getting less and less as it goes down towards where the river sort of turns off and goes off into the backboard, if you like. So anyway, like I said, I'm not going to show every single thing. I'll just get it done and then we'll move on to the next thing. I'll catch you shortly. So there we are so far. I will show you this, but the point is not, this isn't the point of this section of the video, but you can see that I've started to get that fully foliaged up now. Lots of different colours, lots of reeds because it's next to water, but you can see there's dark bits next to light bits, all sorts of bits like that. I've put some sea foam in there, and the Bachmann sea foam already comes foliaged up as well, so there's bits of that in there. I think that's a bit there, and so on and so on and so on. There's lichen in there, which I then I stick in with super glue, go over with a PVA spray, and then go over with scatters, that type of thing. Now, what I do want to point out though is I've now darkened up the river, as you can see. Now, what I did since the last video, because it was quite pale then, wasn't it? I've then went over it with a generous portion of matte varnish, as I think I mentioned. And then after that, I started going in and colouring up the stones. Now, it was a case of painting them individually, but lots of different colours with a slightly, not a thin mix, because all that would just wash off, but a slightly mildly watered down version from the actual density of the paint when you get it out the pot. And then there's lots of different ones again, and also scattered some foliage in there. But as you can see, when you look at it from here, you can see there's a dark bit running right through the middle. And then when it gets to here, it gets quite black on the base. Obviously, there's a weir here with quite a step down. Now, I'd say that step is about 1 centimetre. Whether you can see that is another matter. But I wanted to give the impression that it was quite deep at this point. So hoping when I come to do this, it should give that impression. It'll be quite ripply along here. And then when it gets to here, it turns quite white watery. So obviously you've got the weir bit itself with all the water literally just pouring down. And there's lots of white water around this area. So obviously it should be quite interesting as it goes around that corner. But that's for another time now. Moving on. I went painstakingly painting all the rail sides. Now, the way to do it, the way I did it, was literally just paint on with an acrylic paint. Both sides of both tracks. And I know it's not much. It's only, well, probably about 1.5 meters maybe, plus there's 2 tracks, so maybe about 3 meters, give or take. But you can see all up there, down here, to about where the shadow is, just in front of the pendolino there. So I'm glad that's done. Next stage now is to fill in these gaps, just there. This one, as you can see from that side, I 3D printed some sleepers, which have got a base to them, and then the sleepers are sort of printed on the top, and I was able to slice that through at an angle. Now, I did do one for this, but obviously for some reason it's come out. So I'll 3D print another one and then slice it through in line with the board. So if I do need to take it out, that helps with the divide, if you like. If I use the standard sleepers that I'm going to use in, say, this area, it won't work because they'll all just fall out and break up and it'll be a right old mess. So it'll be just easier to use this stuff here. There will be a signal around here, assuming I can get it to work, of course. We'll see how it goes. And then it's a case of putting in the trunking, which I've 3D printed there. And I'm deciding whether to try and bend it round and create the curve like that, or whether to cut them into individuals. This area here, you can see the line where the scenery stops. So that's my line I've got to work to and make sure the ballast doesn't cross that line. So that'll be an interesting task in itself. But I do want to have a little stage here with boxes, relay boxes and that type of thing. Whether I put them down here or whether I put them on a stage, might be quite interesting to have them on a little stage like that. So we'll see. That's one of the things I can be doing. But yeah, getting there bit by bit by bit by bit. I'll crack on with that now and I'll show you my progress shortly. Well, there seems to be a number of things to show you here. And it's fast becoming, this video, a series of parts. But that's how it goes. Now, first of all, starting with the nearest bit, you can see now the trunking has now gone in and has been weathered. There's a gap there because that's where the gap is in the board. And there's another one there, but doesn't affect anything, to be honest. And I've also 3D printed a piece to go on there. Yes, there's a sleeper missing. Am I worried? No, because it'll almost look as if the ballast covers that sleeper up. I'll try and do that when we get there. And follow it round. You can see this section where I've sort of 3D printed another little bit to go in there, as if the lids have been removed. And there's another one kind of there where a lid has been sort of dumped on the side, if you like. When it's ballasted, I'll try and make up some lids and just sort of scatter them on the ground, which I think could look quite nice. And maybe even some wire just sort of strewn along the outside, as if it's come out of this bit and nobody's bothered to put it back in. That could look quite nice as well, that sort of thing. Just adds a little bit more interest. But you'll also notice that this bit, I've put the trunking in and weathered it, by the way. That's just thinned down black paint, watery black paint, and allowed it just to soak into the gaps. But you might also notice this bit going along the side here. It's very freshly painted. It's very wet, hence the fact it's shiny and it's a slightly different colour to what the rest of it is. So what's that for? Well, both of these are kind of limiters, because as you can appreciate, both pieces of scenery have to be removable for, you know, because obviously, as I've said before many times, if the housing association want to gain access to any part of this room, and this layout has to come out, or part of it has to come out, I want it to be as an easy disassembly as possible. So having these pieces removable means I don't have to rebuild them. That's the point. So this side, obviously ballast will go and butt up to that, and I can make that a nice neat joint, and the scenery butts up to the other side. Now this side, the scenery butts up to that side, and I'll butt up the scenery, as I've said, to just the same as that, but to this side. But I don't want a grey line left, so what I'll do when all this is dry and ready to go, I'll PVA along the top and sprinkle some neat kiln dried sand over the top of that, remove any surplus, and that will just hide the joint, if you like, and then the ballast inside there can then just overlap ever so slightly, and that should work. Welcome back. So you can now see I've got the signal in. Now this was one of the homemade signals that I've 3D printed. If you remember, many months ago, it could even be a year ago, I don't know, but I put signals on Piccadilly Station, and they're all manually operated. There is just below here, you can probably see my fingers, there is a rocker switch. And as I flick it, you can see the green light comes on and then down. And I do have a center off, should I just want to turn them off. But most of the time that will be on green. The green does seem a little bit brighter at the moment, but in normal viewing distance, it looks absolutely fine. I think the camera makes more of it than sometimes need be, but there we go. Now, if you are interested in wiring up a manual signal with like a three-way switch, so you've got a center off, one way for green, one way for red, then I will link in the description how I did that in my previous video when I wired up Piccadilly, and there is a wiring diagram in there too, and it also goes on to explain how you might want to wire up several signals side by side. What it does not do is sequence the signals, so one's on green and then the next one's the previous one's on red and then the previous one's on amber. That is not what I'm doing here. This is literally just operating each signal manually, one at a time and individually. I could go down the Heathcote board route and other boards that are out there, but not at the moment. I'm quite happy doing it this way, and I can switch this as I need to. just in case you wondered why I've put a switch in, obviously just through the tunnel here there is a crossover, so any train coming this direction would need to stop. Anyway, next stage is to get the track ballasted, so I will just do that. There are millions of track ballasting videos out there, and I'm not planning to add to that anytime soon, so I will show you after I've done it. I'll see you later. Yeah, so work continues. It's on the back scene now. So obviously this is just the sky. That's the bit where the road section is, and there's a bridge going across. You'll know that, and that's the bit where it goes through to Dinting. But you can just see there's the sky just there. I've got to put landforms in yet, so there's still quite a bit to do on this. But the scene is coming along now, and the track is now ballasted, weathered. There's some details been added to the scene too. The scenery is now complete and fitted. It's removable, as I said it would be, and it's all coming together. Oh, and OHLE is in there as well, so overhead lines, they're all in. So getting close. Anyway, I'll get this bit done and I'll show you later. Right, so I'm very close now. So there's bits drying on the layout, and this is still drying in itself as well. But as you can see now, I've got landforms on there. Now, what I did do was find some inspirational photographs of actual places, and it was a case of taking a little bit from this picture, a little bit from that picture, and sort of creating fields. But what you will notice, and if you, this particular piece here, well, all of it really, so many different colours, lots of greens, light greens, dark greens, and that bit there could even be a bit of a lake in the distance. So it comes round all sorts of different colours as we go through the countryside. A lot of this bit obviously is hidden by the tunnel, and this area here you won't see that because it's only literally the top surface, because that's where the slope comes in, and then the slope comes in this way as well. So again, some of this you won't see, and indeed this bit here you won't see that either. The slope starts coming in down that line basically, and these little bits here are literally just to give an indication of what's just behind, if you like, and where the scenery is going. So I am quite pleased with that. I'm just going to let everything dry for a few hours, and then I'll get it all together and I'll show you. Take care, speak soon. Well, there it is. The scene is done. Now, I do have to put tracks onto the viaduct behind me, and I also need to put water into the river. But apart from that, and maybe the odd little bit here and there, we're generally done. So I'll just give you a bit of a pan round first of all. So hopefully you can see all the different aspects of that. I think that river will look so much better when the water's in there. But let's go back to the other ends and I'll show you some details. Right, so we'll start back at this end now then. So you can see now I've tried to match up the two boards, so it looks as if it's like one scene. And I think on the whole that does look quite, it ties up quite nicely. Yes, this board is a little bit more vibrant and there's a lot more blue in the sky than the other side, but you can stand in one spot, look over your shoulder and see really black heavy clouds full of rain in one direction and yet bright sun in the other direction. So that's the world we live in. So I'm really not worried by that. So then you can see, if I take you to this section here, we've got an area of concrete over there. Not so happy with that at the moment. That little bit of trompe-l'oeil, it doesn't really tie up so well. So, but I can sort that out when I come to do this area here. But then you got the road as it then appears to go around a corner. That's the idea, and you might just be able to make out that little bit there, which is the road going off into the distance. Yeah, and so we've got lots of trees going down that big steep hill, going off into the distance over there. I'm imagining that to be around about 2-3 miles away over that side there. But as you can imagine there, I've got the lovely big swoop coming down there. I wanted to keep it fairly flat. Didn't want the height there, so that the sky, there was lots of sky to keep this open feeling that I was talking about a few weeks ago. That's the idea. And then obviously all the trunking, or the overhead gantries have gone in, and you'll be able to make out the signal there. I have to get you quite low for this, and it is red. I promise you there is a red light there. Not ever so clear, but it is red. Right, lifting out the way for the 37. Now if I take you over to this wing wall, I've put that in there because it didn't look quite right. If you notice, just there is a slight overhang with the tunnel portal, and I think that little wing wall there just gives it a little bit more of believability, if you like. When the green was going in there and that wing wall wasn't there, it just didn't look as if it was quite believable. So put that bit on there to help that scene out a little bit there. It's quite narrow, that wing wall, compared to those ones over there. But then you've got that little bit of stone there with some foliage around the outside. So I've tried to build up all these areas, not completely, but just lots of patchy greens, loads of different greens, as I said when I was doing the painting side of it. And then we come to this area here. So the idea being that the river would disappear into the distance around the corner, and there are some hills in the background, and there would be a lake just there. And whether we see the same water going around that corner is another matter. You know, I think it's open for interpretation. But this area here, I'm quite pleased with this, to be honest. Quite a simple little arrangement, but we've got this relay box on a stage, and obviously the yellow fence. But there's loads of caps missing off the trunking that's going around the corner there. So loads of caps missing. Glue is slightly still wet, so if you see any white patches, just forgive me. But you might also be able to make out this wire goes around there. There's some caps missing there, and there's some more caps missing kind of there, if I can show you without. But the wire sort of goes along the two, as if nobody's put it back in. That's the idea. But there's a bloke there who's just about to do some digging. So not quite sure what he's up to with that, but there we go. And then obviously you've got the scene as it goes into the bridges and the viaduct over there. So I think once the water goes in a few weeks' time, or the summer holiday perhaps, I think that scene is going to look so much better. But yeah. So tried then to indicate that there's hills in the very long distance away, and these are in the medium distance. You can see things get paler as they go further into the distance, and they start to lose their colour a little bit. But yeah, so on the whole then, really pleased with the way all that's turned out. And yeah, so have to decide now what to do next. I wonder. I'm erring towards Hadfield and this general area here, so I might actually do this bit down here. And thanks Andy from Moorlands, who suggested maybe putting a hump over it. In actual fact, that would work nicely into that corner, so I could make one big piece and just make the hill out of that. So that could work out quite nicely. So we'll see. Anyway, I'll probably come back to you in a couple of weeks with that, and we'll make a start. Anyway, you take care of yourself, and I'll see you again very soon here on Piccadilly. Take care now.